Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Samantha Winona. This is Winona Reads. Today's video is going to be my 23 favorite books of 2023. I went through my Goodreads list of books I've read this year, and so far I'm at 142 books, which is insane to me. This is the year that I read the most books, which is surprising because I feel like I started the year off kind of like iffy and not really getting into a lot, so I'm surprised at where the year has ended. But I picked 23 of my favorite books from that 142 that I have read so far. It is a week before Christmas, and I don't see myself finishing too much more, so I figured why not do a year wrap up before the new year begins. So I have my list here, I have the books here. Some of them I don't have physical copies of, and I'll just put a picture on the screen. Let's dive in. These are going to be in no particular order. Like I said, I just went through my Goodreads list, and so I did try to start from like the beginning of the year, and then it kind of sort of mixed up at the end because I was going through trying to like figure out like what to pick. Finding 23 books that are like, you know, mentionables or your favorites are kind of hard because I don't do that many 5 stars. So these are not all 5-star books, but they are some 5-star books and some honorable mentions. So the first one that I wrote down was Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino, and this was Reflections on Self-Delusion. This was so good. I've seen a few people on Instagram pick this up recently, and I feel like it's just the consensus. This is a really good book. If you haven't already picked it up, you should. So these were not necessarily short stories, but they were, I would almost say, essays. They were her opinions and thoughts and feelings on aspects of our culture, of our society, and womanhood. There was a lot of discussion going on in here. Discussions about girl bosses and, you know, society and women's bodies. There were conversations about, you know, making a place in the workplace, like that hashtag girl boss, that, you know, trend that went around, but really just finding your place as a woman in, you know, equal pay and that sort of thing. There were discussions about like our culturism and how dependent on social media we are, and there was just so much involved in this, and I honestly kind of want to read it again because I don't remember a lot of what the essays were saying. I just remember how powerful and impactful reading it. Like, I tagged so much, as you can see. Hopefully that focused, but there was just so much in here. I do believe this was a 5-star for me. I do highly recommend this one. After that, I don't know where my copy went. I have it around here somewhere, but the number 2 spot was Spare by Prince Harry. Now, this was a memoir, of course, and it is very controversial. I feel like you're either opposed or you're for him and his wife and, you know, their family. It's very one-sided, I feel like, but I loved his writing style. I don't know how much of it was a ghostwriter and how much was him. I would like to believe it was a lot of his writing, but again, I don't know. But I loved the writing style. I loved his insight, and I really loved that it wasn't solely focused on him and Meghan, that was touched on at the end. It was about how he felt in his childhood, how he felt after his mom died, how he felt, you know, being an outcast and making poor decisions as any child would or any adolescent would, but having that critique and heavy media presence. And, you know, it's something that a lot of people, you know, normal people, we don't go through that. So for us to like sit and throw commentary and be like, well, he signed up for that, or he didn't, like, he was born into that, and obviously he would have strong feelings about, you know, the media presence and the tabloids and everything after seeing what happened with his mom, and then just seeing it really continue. And you have to imagine and feel empathy or compassion for someone like that who doesn't get a break. you know? Every single thing is critiqued. Everything seemed to be very negative in the tabloids, and I can just imagine how that puts pressure and weight on somebody. So yeah, I appreciated, you know, his stories about, you know, when he was in the war, just all of it. I did really enjoy that, and like I said, it is very polarized. I did really enjoy that, reading that. After that, All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. This was definitely a 5 stars. If you haven't read this, pick it up. Pick it up. Pick it up. This sat on my shelves for a little bit, and I think it was just one of those where I picked it up and the first like couple pages really pulled me in, and after that it was like a day and a half, I think. I'm assuming I finished it that fast, maybe not, but I just remember not being able to put this down. This is a very impactful story. Like, it says a star-crossed story about the cost of American dream. It's more than just kids, you know, finding who they are and their families and being in high school and trying to like figure out relationships and family stuff and having a job for the first time. This was so much more than that. This, I can't express it enough. This is just one of my favorites. I definitely would reread this again. Noor and Sal, they were best friends growing up. Stuff happens. Her parents get sick. They pass away. You know, they were best friends growing up. Something happened where she started getting stronger feelings. He didn't want to admit the feelings, and they grew their separate ways. They end up back together, you know, in a friendship bond, and then more so after. There's so much more to it. And I think the reason that it is so impactful is not only the cultural differences written in here, but I also think it just touches on so much. It talks about, you know, a parent having alcoholism after the other parent passing away, and the child having the repercussions of that and having to carry on a business and maintain financial situations that kids don't need to go through. And I think maybe that's what impacted me most, was just seeing how much hardship these kids had to face and not really having an actual childhood, but having to have their high school career, basically themselves being an adult before they should be. There was just so much in this, and if you have not picked it up, please do. So good. Another one that I loved was Tell Me Everything by Minka Kelly. I do not have this because I did get it on Audible, but this was another memoir. I feel like this was the year for memoirs for me because a lot of them really hit. Her story was incredible, and I also don't feel like a lot of people know about her situation growing up. Like, obviously she's a very gorgeous actress. I think her story, like, I appreciate stories like hers where she went through hell in her childhood, and she talks about her and her mother's relationship, also her father, but you know, her mother was not a stable person in her life, but she was consistently there. Well, consistently, as she was there as much as she could be. And the beautiful thing about this story was how Minka is able to find forgiveness. She's able to be humble in the relationship with her mother, and you know, after her mom passes, it was a very powerful piece. I think, again, I don't know how much of it is ghostwritten, but I would like to think not so much. But her voice was very moving to listen to her own words through the Audible. It was just something that I think I'll remember. Like, it read very easily, and the stories were sometimes heartbreaking, and it's just an insight that not many people have, I think, or not many people get to have as far as like celebrities. Yeah, definitely another one that I would recommend listening to. Another one that I love, The Henna Artist, Alka Joshi. I loved this, but it is also weird because I think I tried to pick up the second book, and I don't think I like succeeded. I have the second book, I do not have the third. But yeah, I loved this, but it's weird that I didn't immediately go into the second book. I'm not really sure why. I picked this up, and then I had also listened to it on audio, so it was kind of a back and forth, which really I think helped me get through it. This was so impactful, and it had so many things that were brought up And I think that's why like some of these are my favorite, is when they don't try to focus on just a love triangle or just, you know, when there's so much in the story, it just makes it that much better. This had brought up not only financial structures in social tiers, you know, judgments being passed and rumors being believed, you know, just because somebody is beneath them, that they are listening to the more wealthy and the rumors that they created about her. You know, it talks about her abusive marriage that she had run from. It talks about family. There was so much in this that it is something that you think about for a while after you finish it. And I'm not sure if that's why I didn't pick the second one up right away. Like maybe I just wanted to sit with this for a little bit. This was beautiful and highly recommend. Going off of that, one of my recent reads, you all know if you watched my last video, 50 Words for Rain by Asha Lemme, has a place in my heart. This is another one that just has so much going on in the story. It is more than just a discussion about a mother having an affair and having a bastard child in like the royal dynamic of the Japanese culture. There's so much empathy and compassion from her brother, who also had mixed feelings about his mom, but didn't necessarily take that out on her the way that her grandparents did. It was just captivating. It really, really was. It was easy to turn the pages. It was easy to, you know, you put it down to go to bed and then you want to pick it back up in the morning. Like, it's just so good. It does look a little bit daunting. It's 435 pages, but honestly, you fly right through it. It was beautiful. Highly recommend. After that, or another one, I should say, another one of my favorites, Quarter Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. I did get through the entire series this year. I'm proud of myself because that's a lot of paper. Yeah, this one was quite large, but in my opinion, the best one of the series. I could not put this one down. I would say, in my opinion, pink, green, red, orange, as far as which ones I like the most. But I loved this storyline. I think it had everything in the proper amount. There was enough romance, there was enough different stories, different characters being focused on, there was enough banter, there was enough war, and it was just so good. Did not want to put it down, and it makes the, how many pages is it? It makes the 703 pages go by pretty fastly. Pretty quickly. Another one. So I read these kind of close, so I'm gonna go through these kind of quick. These are also semi-recent reads that I've done. I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. This was wonderful. It is a very short book. I do recommend. This one was a woman who is in sort of like an apocalyptic, I guess you would say. It has like the end of the world vibe where she is underneath ground, or under the ground, with a group of women. They escape, and when they make it out, they realize that they are not the only ones who are underground, but they are the only ones that survived. And there's a lot more to it than that. I apologize if that's a little bit of a spoiler. This was so good, and it's one of those, again, that you think about after you finish it. It just sits in your mind, and you like kind of replay the different scenes, but also like you just keep thinking about it afterwards. Like, what would that be like today? Or I don't know, just like maybe how you would react to a situation like that. It's just, it messes with your mind. It's a good one. It is a good one to definitely question things. And then this was another one, Lonely Castle in the Mirror. That was by Mizuki Sugimura, and this was another one I couldn't get into right away, so I did have the help of an audiobook. But once I was in it, oh my gosh, it was so good. These are children that can go through mirrors to this castle. There's a girl with a wolf mask. They not only kind of form these friendships where in their real lives outside of the castle, outside of the mirror, in their real lives, they're having issues at school, they're having issues with connections, making relationships, and they go into this place in the mirror, in the castle in the mirror. They're starting to, I guess, find themselves, figure themselves out a little bit, and form these bonds. And then over time you realize, well, I'm not going to spoil it, but the ending wrapped up in a way that I didn't necessarily expect. Yeah, it was just a really heartwarming read, and I loved it. Another one was The School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan. This was so good. This was another one that I listened to as well as read along, and this was another one that you think about afterwards because there were frustrating moments. What happens is she loses her child due to a situation, which starts right off the bat happening, and then she has to go to a class to prove she is a good mother. And while she is there, it talks about, it's like a hidden, maybe not hidden, like a social commentary or a subtle social commentary on what society thinks good mothers should look like. And I think that was the most frustrating part of it and why I loved it so much, because good mothers have different dynamics and it's not cookie cutter. This just had so much commentary on like societal expectations of moms. Yeah, you just have to read it. It was really, really good. And I think if you're a mom, it'll be frustrating reading some of the parts, but it also is just so good. And again, it makes you think after the end. When you finish it and you close it and you sit with it, it just makes your mind wander into so many different directions. And I think that's what really makes it a good book and makes it a favorite. Another one was The Pearl by John Steinbeck. I have that somewhere. I don't know where it is, but it is one that will stay with you again. This was simple. It was like 100 and something pages, but it packed a punch. It has the best, in my opinion, critique on social classes in the easiest setting, poverty and how they were treated when their child was sick and all they want to do is take care of their child, and then the rich shunning them, saying, no, we can't help you, you don't have enough money, and then they get that money, and how they're treated. They're treated with respect, but they're also in a position to be stolen from. There's just no winning. So it was a very good social commentary on financial status and, again, class like tiers and how everybody stacks from rich to poor, how everybody's treated. And I think it is so impactful because it is still an issue today with the 1% and everybody in between, and middle classes just growing, poverty lines growing. There's just classics like that last through generations are ones that are amazing for me. So I'm glad I had it on my shelves. I'm glad I got to read it this year. I think it was a jar pick, so I'm glad that I pushed myself to get that one done because that was obviously a favorite of mine. Another one was Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I did just wrap this up in a recent video, so I'm not really going to do it again. This was another, was it 5 stars? I think it was either 4.5 or 5 stars for me. A very good favorite. I love his writing style. He is definitely, if you're looking to get into reading, did I say that right? If you're looking to start reading classics, but you're not sure where to start, I would say George Orwell and James Baldwin are where you want to start. I love his writing style. Very easily read. This was a little over 100 pages. I have a bunch underlined in here and highlighted. Again, packed a punch in a really small amount of time. It wasn't only a discussion on lust and love and infatuation and who to be, like believing in yourself and like trusting yourself and finding comfort in yourself versus who other people think you should be and basing yourself off of that. There was just so much, and I think it was a very subtle way. Again, the reason that this is one of my favorites is you follow the storyline because the writing is so easy, it's so beautiful, but then when you sit with it and you really look at some of the words or passages and you're like, there's so much in that. There's so much in that. I recommend. Another one that I loved that I recently read was Holiday Romance by Catherine Walsh. And that one I think was like a 4 or 5 stars as well. That was a great romance. I loved it for the holiday season, and I just thought it was so well done and heartwarming, and it was just something that I actually think I'm going to remember. I think a lot of times romances kind of bleed into one another because they're so close, or the storylines and characters, they just kind of seem, not to say it again, but cookie cutter. They seem to have the same like premise. I hadn't read anything like it necessarily in the sense of, I mean, it had, I don't want to say it had the Harry Met Sally vibe just because of the meeting once a year kind of thing, but I just read it and I loved it, and that's why it's on my favorite list. Another one that I loved, how many of you have read this year? This was so good. And this was another one, Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This was another one. One, I didn't realize that she had written The Storied Life of Adri Fickery, which is a favorite of mine as well. I think I read that last year, and I loved her writing. I just did not realize that it was the same writer. This was so good, and it was a story about like gaming and not just gaming, but like, again, social commentary on women in the workplace and relationship dynamics, and it just had so much. It was so entertaining. Obviously one of my favorites. It did, for me, have a similar vibe to Lessons in Chemistry in the sense of women in the workplace, and for that, I think is why I loved it a little bit more. Like, if it had just been based on like the relationships, I don't think I would have vibed with it that much, but because it had so much more going for it, I did really enjoy it. And I have seen a couple people say they weren't really invested in it, and it is a little bit long, but again, I loved it. I would recommend this. I think this is a great Christmas buy as well, so I would recommend picking this up. Another one that was one of my favorites was How Not to Drown in a Glass of Water by Angie Cruz. I hate when it does that. It says no movement and it just stops recording. I am moving. What would you like me to do? Okay. How Not to Drown in a Glass of Water by Angie Cruz. This was a interview set style. Again, very petite, but it leaves a mark with you after you finish it. It had to do with being a caretaker, being a mother, having expectations for your kids, and then having to deal with, not separation, but like having to deal with boundaries from your child, and more than that, I think a little bit of resentment from your child, just because things don't match the way that you thought they would. It has to do with her being let go from a job and then not really finding a place. You know, she's a caregiver, she watches kids, but then again, she has the kids taken away from her because she's not watching them the way that the parents think that she should be, and she seems a little bit negative, which was hard for me to read because there is a little bit of a victim mentality reading this, and it can be a little bit frustrating, but at the same time, you're reading this from her point of view and you're finding out more and more, and you have more and more empathy and more compassion towards her at the end. Yeah, again, it was short, but it was great and not what I expected. I feel like this goes without saying, and again, this is going to be a polarized one. You love it or you hate it. There's really no in between. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I loved it. I read it in like 48 hours, maybe less. It was just great. It was entertaining. I wasn't looking for something that had, you know, so much, I don't know, character development and a huge fantasy world. I picked this up knowing it would be devourable, and it was. And it was perfect. So if you're, you know, really into fantasy books and you're like, you love the world building and you don't care if it takes 300 pages to get into, this is not for you. But if you want something that is going to envelop you from page one and have you fly through, and it may be irritating at times, the relationship dynamic between the two, it's supposed to be. It is. It's supposed to be frustrating. People are supposed to bother you. You get through it, and I thought it was so entertaining. The conversations between the dragons was my favorite. I was not expecting that. But yeah, it was good. So I do see the hype with it. I understand other people's critiques about it, but it's not meant to be, I think it's more meant to be romance and then fantasy, not fantasy with romance. Does that make sense? Another one that I loved. I love her writing. It's so good. Yours truly, Abby Jimenez. I've heard someone say Jimenez. You're not supposed to pronounce the J. I'm not sure how to say her last name. I read this one. No, I read her first one first. This is the second one. I don't think you have to read them in order, but I did. Because I had gotten this from Book of the Month. Was this the first one? Or please don't listen to me. I don't know which one came first. I think this is the second book in a series by her. But I loved this. I loved it. Her writing is so good. I thought it was so creative. It was something that I hadn't read before as far as plot. And yeah, I just flew through it, and I love her writing. She is definitely an auto-buy author for me now. I will read whatever she puts out. Great romance. I don't really want to go into it too much because I feel like it is all over Instagram and YouTube just because so many people do love her writing, so I'm sure you've seen it before. Two more that I don't have with me, they were audiobooks, was With Regrets by Lee Kelly. I did read that recently in one of my wrap-ups, so if you have not seen that, please go check it out. That was another unexpected love for me. Definitely one of my favorites. Not Gossip Girl, but like a Big Little Lies. It had that mix between, oh, my camera. I just want to get this done fast because my camera keeps dying. So I just want to wrap up the last couple books of my favorites, 2023. We're gonna go through them fast. Ready? I Could Live Here Forever by Hannah Halpern. I loved the storyline. I didn't really love the characters, which is why I think I rated it a little bit lower. But it was still like a 4.5 stars. This story was so good. Talks about addiction, and just a person in a relationship with someone who has addiction, and how much turmoil that changes, you know, a person, and how that person treats you. And going off of that, another favorite was again about addiction, Beautiful Boy by David Sheff. This was a memoir about his son Nick going through the struggles, how he responded as a parent, and again, just really well done, very impactful, and the writing was very easy to get into. This is also a movie, so you could always do, you know, read the book and do a movie. Two more. Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. If you have not read her writing is so good. This one is not fantasy. This was, I think, just regular fiction. It talked about the dynamic between different races for different authors, and it talked about social media and how quickly that can impact an author. But there was so much more to the story than that, and again, it was very addicting. Her writing is very, very good. So if you wanted something outside of her fantasy series, definitely recommend this. This is also another good one for like a Christmas buy for someone, a reader in your family. And the last one, I don't know where the cover went, but this is Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang. I loved this book. This is one of the ones that, again, you think about afterwards. I have not stopped thinking about it since I read it, and I think it was like October maybe that I read it, maybe even before then. This had a discussion about beauty styles, but also it was like having females, they weren't bleaching their skin, but they were taking products and looking more Americanized through the company's products. It had it's labeled on Goodreads as horror, which I wasn't expecting it to be labeled as that. I didn't read it as that, but the commentary of, again, like how we are supposed to look in, you know, today's culture and everything being posted on social media, and just having those beauty standards go up and up and up, and the weird, I feel like maybe a little bit of sci-fi twist is how I perceived it. I did not perceive it as fantasy or as horror, but it definitely had like a science fiction twist as far as the products that they were making, and then the twists that she realized she was participating in as a employee. so good. I have not stopped thinking about it. If this would be like, if I had a top 5, this would be one of my top 5. This was very, very good. So those are my 23 favorites for 2023. Let me know in the comments what was one of your favorites of 2023 and what are you looking to get into in 2024. I feel like I need to take a moment and look and see what's coming out and what I have on my shelves to see what I really want to get into. So stay tuned for 24 books that I want to read in 2024. But this has been a great reading year, and I hope that you guys are also having a great reading year, that you're finding a lot that you're consistent with and vibing with and really getting into and enjoying. Keep reading. Please subscribe to my channel. Feel free to share, and I will see you soon. Happy holidays. Bye.